Today, we're going to be looking at a portable video game console that had a physical design that was so iconic that almost anyone in the world that sees its gray brick shape from a distance instantly knows exactly what it is. Only, it's not what it looks like, and it definitely is not what you think it is, because they 100% ripped off Nintendo to the core. This is a Power Joy Voyager. This isn't a Game Boy. It's a fake boy. Folks, I have no idea what I'm getting into here. I picked this up without having seen it before or knowing anything about it, or what it does. It's a complete and total mystery to me. But I mean, look at it. The box it comes in? It's crazy. The classic TV game Power Joy Voyager. Knockoff portables? Not uncommon. But this claim here grabbed my attention. Portable or TV? One console that can play games on a TV as well on the go? For the Game Boy era, that's pretty advanced. Nintendo was certainly not doing anything like that with their Game Boy line. Oh, and looky here, 84 classic games and thousands of additional games in portable playpad. Wait, why are they specifying two different numbers? Why don't they just give it as one number, like 1084? I think that's a mystery to be solved for later. Inside the box, we have the playpad, which is what they call the system, I guess, a single Power Joy game cartridge, 2 wired gamepads, and we've also got AV cables and a power adapter. We'll worry about all that TV stuff in a little bit, but let's get right into what they refer to as the portable playpad. The first thing I notice holding this thing, well, just because it looks like a Game Boy doesn't mean it's built like one. This thing is held together with hopes and dreams. Or, more accurately, ramshackled with despair and nightmares. Nothing on here seems to be up to the same rigorous build quality of Nintendo's iconic portables. Also, when I shake it around, sounds like there's something loose inside. I don't know what that is. That's kind of freaky. What could that be? Is it just crap? Now, I could spend a long time just completely breaking this thing down and showing everything that's wrong with it, but let's just focus on a couple of the, I think, biggest issues that really irritated me. First, the directional pad. Can I even call it a pad? Because it's not. It's buttons. Individual buttons that can be pushed in all at once. I don't even have to play it to know that this can lock your movement in a game or awkwardly throw you in a direction that you were not expecting. PlayStation controllers use a similar looking layout, but even their D-pad has a pivot point in the center, preventing you from mashing all the directions at once. Not good, Power Joy. Not good. Second, the screen. Our system was new out of the box and still had a thin plastic screen protector on it, but over the years of not being used, it seems to have damaged the screen and stained it with glue. Neat! I tried my darndest to wipe it clean, but it was no use. Now, obviously an ancient unremoved screen protector isn't part of the build quality, but you know what is? The actual screen itself. Folks, this thing is barely hanging on. You can lightly push it around the plastic frame and it makes an interesting clicky noise. Feels like I could pull it out pretty easily if I tried. This was either installed improperly, or designed poorly, or hey, why not both? Is this the worst screen I've ever seen on a portable system? Yes it is. And you're hearing that from a guy who owns a freaking Gamecom. Third, the cartridge slot. That's correct, the Voyager comes with its own Power Joy game cart and a slot to insert it. Now this is pretty interesting, because most portable consoles I've played that are knockoffs typically have the games built in and not on a separate cartridge. And I was kinda curious thinking this might be some weird little cart that just hides the fact that the games are already inside the console, but I opened up the cartridge and discovered that it actually had ROM chips on the cart. So yeah, we're actually looking at something that has actual games on it. This cartridge slot on the system is not a smooth, satisfying insert like with what a Game Boy provides. Here, it feels like you need to harshly jam the cart in. Despite it having the same shape and size of actual Game Boy games, they're not compatible. You might be able to stuff it into either system, but the connecting pins do not match up. No dice. But once the Power Joy cart's inserted into the Voyager, you can just pull it out while the system is still on. Neat trick, huh? The original Game Boy had a power switch that physically locked a game cart in place, to help prevent the cart from being damaged. These folks didn't even have the basic decency to steal that obviously good design from Nintendo. And speaking of power switches, let's fire this sucker up and see what's inside. The Voyager has 2 power settings, TV and LCD. Try to use this in handheld mode and setting it to the TV does nothing but turn on the power light. Better be careful not to mistake this as off like I did and accidentally leave it on for a few hours, because batteries ain't cheap. Anyways, once you flick past the TV, you keep going to LCD and you're met with the most cheerful sound of Beethoven's Ode to Joy you've ever heard, at max volume. Ugh. Okay, I gotta get this turned down. Oh, come on. Quiet up. What did I hit? What did I hit? Select? Select's the volume button? Why did you make it select? Who would have figured that out? Whatever, let's just start a game and see what we have. It's just a silly little tank game, not really exciting. Let's try and go back to the main menu and... Oh no. Every time I reset the system, the music comes back to full volume, even if I set it down to nothing? How many games am I gonna have to sit...
Thousands of additional games.
Crap. Okay, here is what we're dealing with. Turns out this system has less in common with a Game Boy and more in common with a discount calculator. What we have here, folks, is what is commonly known as a brick game. If you're unfamiliar with these units, a brick game is a type of LCD handheld device notoriously sold everywhere in the 90s.
This new computer chip technology replaces older cartridge games forever. Never ever buy those expensive cartridges again!
These machines rode the wave of the Tetris craze that hit with the release of the original Game Boy. Brick games were mass-produced by a bunch of companies worldwide and could house anywhere from a few to apparently thousands of brick-based games. Mostly, they were cheap. Cheap in every sense of the word. Cheap to produce, cheap to buy, and usually felt totally cheap in hand. As for this Voyager system, well, it doesn't feel premium at all. Its lack of a volume dial like what could be found on a Game Boy, clearly a cost-saving measure. And again, need I remind you? That's usually the sign of something that's not well built. I spent way too long playing this thing. So let me take you through the basic game styles I found while playing the Voyager. And because nothing had a name, not even in the included manual or packaging, I decided to do their job for them and give titles to all the games myself. 1. Block tank game. You're a tank. You shoot other tanks. There is a boss at the end of every level. It's a much bigger tank that is so large it doesn't have the ability to fire at you when you hide on either side of the screen. Everything is crammed into a frustratingly small playfield with little room to move around or dodge enemy fire. It's unfair. Spawn camping is the only way to play. 2. Block race game. Race a car while dodging other cars. Choose between a 2-lane road or a 3-lane road. Drive up to the north, drive down to the south. It's boring. The game features the worst sound of any game on the platform. Just listen to this. I think this is supposed to be an engine sound. It does this the entire time you're playing. 3. Block snake game. It's a game of snake. Sometimes they put random blocks or walls you need to avoid in the stages. It doesn't always move correctly to your inputs. Very uninspired. 4. Block vertical shooter. A random selection of blocks slowly descends towards your lone block that shoots blocks to destroy the incoming blocks. Blocks. You just hold the fire button down and sweep left and right, you destroy everything. No challenge. 5. Block Frogger. Imagine Frogger, but created with teeny tiny little blocks that you need a microscope to see. This is likely the worst clone of Frogger in existence. I'd give them credit for managing to fit this game into such a small form factor, but when the end result is this, better off hopping to another game. Yeah, because it's Frogger and he Hops. 6. Block QuickTime happy face, sad face. A direction is shown on the screen. You tap the correct direction. Face make a smile. You tap incorrectly. Face not make a smile. This is barely a game. 7. Block horizontal line maker. It's the inverse of block vertical shooter. Instead of destroying blocks with blocks, you're laying blocks down to form lines of blocks that once completed, disappear. Just like before, this provides no challenge. Also, far too many blocks. 8. Block shape match. 3 incoming shapes are slowly falling down from the top of the screen. You have to match your shapes at the bottom and throw them at the falling shapes or it's game over. Tedious. Blocks, 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 blocks. 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 Blocks, 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 blocks. 9. Tetris. It's just Tetris. It's the game you know, but with worse physics that fail to rotate and move when you want them to sometimes. The best way I can explain this is that the shapes instantly get stuck when they get close to another shape. Also, unlike real Tetris, this one will throw in random shapes that are not tetrominoes, like this wild C shape here. You can't play Tetris correctly with random non-tetromino shapes. It's very broken. When you play Tetris almost anywhere else, you have 2 buttons that act as your left and right rotate. This is a great way to play so you can kinda just sneak your pieces into a specific movement as fast as you can. You won't be doing that here though, because unfortunately on the Voyager, you only have 1 button that you can push. This blue one right here, and it rotates in a fixed rotation every single time. But yeah, all that was 9 games. So you might be asking, how can they claim thousands of titles on the box like they did? Well, you can claim anything if you just make it up. Hey, if Power Joy can do it, I can do it too. I'm 9'10" with purple skin, and I have 4 arms. So why are they claiming this massive game library? Well, let's walk through the Voyager's game menu. There are 26 games labeled A through Z. And before you do the math, I know that's more than the 9 games I showed off. Well, games I through Z are all just Tetris. That's a whole lot of Tetris. The whole menu is a nightmare to explore. Each game has settings to adjust, mode, speed, and level. You might not think much of this, but every number and value is adjusted in different, irritating ways. Like, increasing a mode number is achieved by pushing down on the directional pad, and decreasing the number, you push up. I absolutely hate it. Nothing makes sense. It's like they programmed the controls by looking into a mirror and did it all in reverse. But this whole collection of numbers over here, well, this is how they justify saying thousands of games. Every game I just showed you has minor brief changes. Well, sometimes. Switching the numbers in the menu usually does absolutely nothing. And I mean nothing at all. But because the number was modified, they treat it like a unique game. For example, that block race game, you can set it to run with 2 lanes, 3 lanes, going south or going north. They are all considered individual games, but that should be a crime. They're all the same game. No matter how much I tinkered around, every so-called variant just repeated after 2 or 3 number changes. This is a hot scam, folks. Real greasy. And yeah, I know a few of you out there might think that this would be fun, to test out all these fantastic game modes. Well, it's not. It's not fun at all. These games were clearly not tested. Modifying anything in the wrong way and you'll find yourself instantly dying as soon as the game starts. Like spawning your character at the very top of brick vertical shooter, leaving you no time to react at all. What are you supposed to do with that? I mean, it just starts and it's game over. Set the speed to 15 on Frogger, and our little Frogger block character thing disappears due to a visual glitch preventing you from seeing where you are on the stage. Tetris has the most variants on here. You'll not want to play any of these due to the inexcusably frustrating controls. It's not just a minor annoyance. More often than not, it's impossible to play these games properly. So far, the Voyager's value proposition is pretty weak. It does nothing better than Nintendo's Game Boy. You can pick up copies of games that are leagues better than anything they hastily made on this portable system. Block Tank Game is nothing at all compared to the fun, fast-blasting, explosive action of Tracks. Block Race Game looks like an ancient relic compared to F1 Race. Block Snake Game, play Serpent instead. It's way more engaging playing against another snake. Block Vertical Shooter and Block Horizontal Line Maker, just play Space Invaders. Block Frogger doesn't even require magnification to play with the far superior Game Boy graphics. And Tetris? Buddy, Tetris is Game Boy. As a portable game system, this is a complete failure. So now, let's try these games on a TV. I mean, I don't really know how a big TV is gonna help these games. I mean, they're still probably gonna be pretty bad, right? But here goes nothing. Let's switch to the TV and... Huh. What? Where did these games come from and where did the garbage brick games go? Look, I bet if I remove the cart while playing the brick game mode... Yep, look at that. It still works. This isn't a Game Boy cart. It's a miniaturized and quite likely pirated garbage dump of Famicom ROMs. It's not that I want to play those brick games again because, well... who would? But that was the one cool thing I thought this did, and it doesn't even do that. So no playing portable games on TV or TV games portably here. Don't worry, baby. This thing's got nothing on you. You're still the best. This title screen here makes it pretty clear that we're dealing with a generic Famiclone system. Whether you call it a Famicom in Japan or an NES virtually anywhere else, this system is rocking the same setup, just cloned with knockoff parts. The big N totally didn't give the old Nintendo seal of quality on this thing, that's for sure. But in these cases, generic rarely means boring, so let's do some digging and see what we can find. All right, let's power cycle through this again and... Whoa. No. The power switch is busted! It somehow switched between the LCD and TV settings and powered both on at the same time. This is incredible. I mean, it's a mess. You can't play anything this way. One video game console playing two completely different game systems internally with the same controls? Wild, but a sign of bad manufacturing practices, clearly. Moving on from this, let's play the system properly. And to do this, I think I'll plug in the Power Joy's wired gamepad. And if you can trick someone else into playing with you, there's a second player controller. That's nice. Let's start with something that sounds at least a little exciting, right? Let's try a game I don't think I'm familiar with. Hyper Olympic? Which is... Hey, what? I do know this game. This is track and field for the Nintendo Entertainment System. But I suppose this is the Japanese release? Great. Looks like we may be voyaging through a bunch of ROMs from different territories, meaning we could be getting just about anything on this device. Well, I guess that won't be the worst thing in the world as long as everything runs correctly and...
Somebody call an exorcist! The Voyager's been seized by a demon!
I think this game is locked up. Let's switch to something else and... Eventually it snaps back to what seems to be proper working order? Well, I guess now we can finally run the 100-meter dash. There you go, and check it out, we nail it! But it's hardly a challenge when you just push this button down here and you win. I'm pretty sure that's not how the original game worked, but that's how it works here. Even though I'm really good at a 100-meter dash, I still can't seem to play these other events properly. Luckily, the Power Joy Voyager comes with a manual. No, it ain't winning awards for looking fancy, but it does have game summaries and what seems to be simplistic control guides for every game included on the cart. Let's see. Yes, here. Hyper Olympic. 100 meters and other events. Button bashing is often the only way to win. Button bashing? I think they mean mashing, but even then, that's not accurate. One button let me win the 100-meter race, so I don't know what that's all about. The description talks about clay shooting too, which is in the North American release of track and field, but I don't think it was included in Hyper Olympic. The ROM we're playing here just doesn't have that game. Real weird. Honestly, the game description in the manual is real slim on details and strangely vague for a game that features a bunch of different sports. Great. Does it at least tell us which buttons do what? L equals shoot, R equals shoot? What? What about running and throwing and... Wait, hold up. Look at this controller. L equals shoot, R equals shoot? There are no L and R buttons anywhere on this thing. Do they mean the left and right directional buttons? Which is even more confusing when you see that the face buttons also appear to be directional triangle buttons. But no matter what you hit, you're not shooting anything in this game. Here, what's this? J equals joystick or plus shape pad. Okay, I think I follow that. L equals left, west and south buttons. R equals right, north and east buttons. Are they referencing compass directions? I just want to know the placement of the two face buttons on an NES or Famicom controller. Why is that so hard? Okay, I can figure this out. If the triangle symbolizes the cardinal directions, I guess north is the green button up top, east is the red button to the right, south is the blue button on the bottom, and then west is the yellow one to the left there. That kind of makes sense, I think. What was so difficult about using letters like A and B? Worked fine on the NES and the Game Boy. Okay, with all that ironed out, why do I not feel any closer to deciphering how this game is actually played? We'll just have to wing it. Back into Hyper Olympic, we quickly figure out that the extra face buttons, the yellow and green ones, are turbo versions of the two face buttons on a standard NES controller. A welcome discovery in a game everyone knows is all about button bashing. But seriously, it takes away the skill involved in all of these events. I don't feel like I achieved anything. Let's play something else. Oh look, they've got Lode Runner. Boy, do I love me some Lode Runner. Yep, the good old Lode Runner intro music seems to be playing just fine. This is all looking... Wait, where's the copyright information for the game? Shouldn't it all be at the bottom of the screen here? Did the Power Joy people go out of their way to remove it? There's no way. Hold on. Let's bring up our Hyper Olympic footage again for a sec. Ha! Great. Here too. The splash screens have been scrubbed of copyright information. Unbelievable. Did they think that would make their bootleg somehow legal? Someone needs to contact these people and let them know that this ain't how copyrights work. Anyway, if there's one thing that years of playing bad consoles and knockoff systems has taught me, is that if a game is hacked, even extremely minimally like this, there's a good chance it'll render the software broken at some point. Probably why we had to deal with that wonderfully busted music in Hyper Olympic. Getting into Lode Runner, barely 10 seconds of play instantly started to set my brain on fire. Something is very wrong with how it plays. You see, Lode Runner has a particular control scheme in its original NES and Famicom releases. It's simple and intuitive. You move around with the D-pad and you drill holes in the level using the B and A face buttons. This lets you create pits that enemies can stumble into. The B button, the left face button, lets you drill left. The A button, which is the right face button, lets you drill right. The problem I'm experiencing right now? Swapped buttons. I press the right face button on the Voyager's controller and my character drills to the left. Press the left button, he drills to the right. Not good. Sure, you can probably rewire your brain to make this work after a while, but it caused me a lot of frustration just messing around in the very first stage. Why even bother doing this? Who could have possibly benefited from changing the controls? And you know what? On reflection, I think this game is missing a whole mode right from the main menu. We're missing the level editor option. You can create your own dream Lode Runner stages with the game's very easy-to-use level creator. I'm confused though, they just removed it from the game? Why do that? Look at this, we have 1-player mode, 2-player mode, and there should be an option below that edit mode is still selectable? They just made it invisible? Oh, buddy, this is rough. We can only assume the edit mode text was accidentally wiped from the game when the copyright information was being brushed under a rug somewhere. Guess that's the Power Joy caliber workmanship right there. Speaking of the Power Joy attention to detail, here we have Circus Charlie, which is, yep, Circus Charlie. I guess the folks that tossed this ROM on the console mistook the fancy R in the title for a B. Cool. I'd say they were in a rush making this thing, but they clearly still had enough time to wipe out Circus Charlie's copyright notice. Back to the menu, I think I see a classic arcade title we should probably dip into. Druaga. Got to be short for the Tower of Druaga. This is the Famicom release of the game. Once again, the title screen has all legal information wiped. 4 for 4. But that's not the only issue we're seeing here. Take a good look at the text in the title. There's something really weird going on, specifically with the letter E. For some reason, the second line of the letter seems to be overextended. It's a very excited letter E. If you're unfamiliar with the Tower of Druaga, it's a game that consists of a series of maze levels that your character pokes around to find an exit. You find power-ups and items along the way that help you fend off foes and open locked doors. It's a fun, challenging game that isn't always intuitive, but has lots of secrets. Unfortunately, that letter E with the, extra business wasn't the only sign of the game being damaged. We're seeing a lot of broken sprites. Take a look at the blobs bouncing around on the screen. There's a stretch of white pixels jutting from the right of them that kind of looks like a spike or even a weapon, but it's totally not. This right here is how the sprites should look from the original Famicom release. Someone who has never played it before might actually think these little blubbers were armed. And it's not just the blobs that are showing up improperly. The hero himself, this orangey-yellow knight, also seems to have extra pixels stretching out of his sprite. At first, this may not seem like the biggest issue in the world, but it is. The way Druaga plays is that you make the knight hold out his sword and then move into enemies in order to attack them. Well, with this weird pixel spill issue, the knight kind of looks like he has his sword drawn, even though he doesn't. If you're not paying attention, it can be easy to forget you don't have your weapon drawn, leading to one of those green slimes ending your run. Arkanoid is another classic arcade title, and it happens to also be the very first spinner control game that I ever played. And while I know this was released on the NES and Famicom and can use the regular stock NES controller, I also happen to know that this game got its own controller from Taito called the VOS controller that mimicked the control feel of the actual arcade game. Can you play Arkanoid without the special controller? Well, sure you can. Should you? Absolutely freaking not. I don't know if I'd call this unplayable, but it sure as heck ain't fun. The paddle moves so slowly with the D-pad that you'll regularly miss deflecting the ball properly. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad with a real Nintendo D-pad, but being forced to use the controllers included with the Voyager? It just feels way worse. I'm much better at this on real hardware. Come on, come on! Move, you stupid paddle, move! It's making me feel like I have the reflexes of a sedated garden snail. With all these losses piling up, I'm kinda surprised I haven't hit a game over yet. Clearly, I've died enough to lose all my lives. Wait, let's check that splash screen again. Well, would you look at that? No copyright info here either. Seems when the Power Joy folks modified this game ROM, they also hacked in infinite lives, which would sound like an improvement, right? But when a game is as painfully unwinnable as this, it means you get stuck in a nightmare hardware failure loop. Give me a game over. Just give me a game over. I don't want to play this anymore. Just tell me I'm done. Tell me I'm done. Tell me I'm done! Pac-Land was another title first in arcades. Here, we have another Famicom port, and as always, no copyright info. Good job, Power Joy. No one will ever know who holds the rights to one of gaming's oldest, most iconic mascots. Namco will be none the wiser. Pac-Land, if you've never played it, is an interesting game. It's got strange controls. If you're playing as player 1 on a traditional controller, you use the B button to move left and the A button to move right, with every direction on the D-pad used to jump. Hey, I don't know, that's just how Namco originally programmed it, but it's really not that difficult to play once you get used. What? Oh, the problem with Lode Runner with the reverse buttons? It's happening here as well. When the B and A buttons are ultra-specific in controlling, say left and right movement or left and right attacks, this makes games ultra-confusing and hard to play. I've got to push left to move Pac-Man right, and push right to move Pac-Man left? This has not been a single game-specific problem. I think it's happening system-wide. Did they wire this controller incorrectly? Did they not know which order the A and B buttons should have been on the real hardware they were stealing from? Oh, that's bad, folks. That's real bad. You know what? While we're on the topic of fumbled button mapping, we might as well look closer at the two controllers that came bundled with this shoddy monster piece of a system. You may have noticed we have two very different looking pieces of controller hardware here, both of which have a pretty short cable that is fused together like some budget mythological controller beast. It plugs into the bottom of the Voyager. I wouldn't have minded these controllers if I could switch to a real controller from Nintendo, but they didn't use a real Nintendo controller input port, so I can't just swap this out with a better controller. Awesome! And folks, you'll want to switch, because both these controllers are made up of components built with cheap-feeling textured plastic. They're relatively thin, and their wavy rounded bodies have blobby, unergonomic handles of different lengths. If you look at these things and think,
Well, those look like crap to hold.
well, you're right, and they play like crap too. You know, I've seen controllers with the cable stick out from the top. I've seen controllers with the cable stick out from the bottom. But I ain't never seen a cable stick out of the right handle that awkwardly jabs into your palm before. What's the function here, Power Joy? There is no way anyone making this thing could have found this comfortable. It's actually uncomfortable to hold it right now, like actually bad. Why would you do this? Why? The first player controller has the same faux D-pad we complained about when we were looking at the Voyager's handheld hardware, so you can just copy and paste my thoughts from that. But it does have a not-so-hidden function that we'll be talking about later, so stick around for that. It's gonna be a blast. While the second controller shares a lot of those same sad inputs, there is one glaringly different thing happening here on the left. Is that an analog stick? Well, no, it isn't. At least not in how you would imagine an analog stick would work. You see, though the stick looks like it should have 360-degree movement and extend to the octagonal plastic around it, it doesn't. You can only thumb the cheap-feeling stick around in standard D-pad directions. It's stiff and doesn't come close to resting in the plastic surrounding it. For an added fun bonus, you can pop the whole thing down and lock it in place, preventing you from moving it around at all. And yeah, that'll happen sometimes when you're playing with it. This is unquestionably the worst thumbstick I've ever used across every platform I've ever played. That's a triumph is what that is. I don't know who has it worse, player 1 or player 2. But I think both players will find that a short fused cable, plus a heated one-on-one match of Hyper Olympic, plus pulling on these little ropes attached to a very light portable system, equals a console that is going to be voyaging off the table and smashing onto the floor. On the topic of questionably fused elements, going over all the hardware that came with the system, you've probably had a couple moments of Nintendo deja vu. And that is happening because the Voyager and its peripherals are comprised of leached Nintendo history. For example, the Voyager has a cart loaded with hacked ROMs from the Famicom and Town Entertainment System era that is both the same size and shape of a real Game Boy game cartridge. The face buttons on the controllers have the coloration of Super Famicom buttons, while the left inputs on controller 1 have the purple hue of a Super Nintendo button. On controller 2, you've got a stiff impersonation of a Nintendo 64 analog stick. The base Voyager system, we've already been over this, folks. It screams Game Boy clone all over. So if you're like me, you look at this thing and all you see is Nintendo everywhere. But what if I told you there was still more Nintendo lifeblood crammed into this package? Something fantastically strange that we haven't even revealed yet. The Voyager has a light gun, built smack dab on top of the first player controller. It's got to be one of the thinnest, most oddly shaped light guns we've ever used. Has a trigger built right into the handle and everything. But it's still shaped like a gamepad. So no, this does not feel anywhere near comfortable in hand. If you thought gripping these controllers for standard play felt bad, using them as a light gun is several mighty leaps worse. You cannot possibly get a good grip on it, and it's even less comfortable to press the trigger. But what good is a weirdly melded peripheral abomination without games? Well, guess what? The Voyager's got some! Yay. Like Clay Shoot. What's that? You don't remember Clay Shoot? Well, that's because this is just a snipped out portion of a famous light gun title. This is Game C from Duck Hunt, also known as Clay Shooting. Why did they go out of their way to modify a Duck Hunt ROM and not include Duck Hunt? I have no freaking idea, but they did it. So you start Clay Shoot, and what happens? You're immediately tossed into round 1 of Clay Shooting from Duck Hunt. Yes, no title screen means no copyright infringement. Right? Right? Let's pay these Power Joy folks one compliment. This zapper does actually work with a standard CRT television. And believe me, I was totally expecting it to just catch fire when I tried to use it. I was able to shoot down discs with a fair bit of accuracy. Got me feeling pretty good about myself. But as the rounds went on and the discs disintegrated, something just wasn't sitting right. I stopped aiming directly at the targets, and to my surprise, I was still hitting them. I'm baffled by this. Some shots would miss, others would hit when I know I didn't aim at them at all. It's equally cheap and forgiving. You either hit everything without trying, or you miss things when you do try. It's perplexing and very unreliable. Congratulations, Power Joy! You gave us a flawed controller and let us kind of play the most boring part of Duck Hunt. Anyway, you may be wondering if the system offers loads and loads and loads more light gun titles that actually work with the hardware. Well, yes. Gotcha! No, there's only one more game. It's gotcha. Not only is there just one more light gun title playable on this entire system, it's also not really playable. Gotcha! The sport! Sorry, the double exclamation mark makes me really want to scream that title. Is it fun? Challenging? I can't rightly tell you that. Because the Voyager's crappy hardware is working the exact way it did when we were testing out not Duck Hunt. There's a slight difference to how Gotcha is played, in that you use the controller's D-pad to move around stages, but when it comes to pelting targets... Nope! Still not functioning properly. I barely take aim and the opposition gets blasted. I can't believe I'm complaining about hardware that makes me more successful at a video game, but here we are. The challenge is gone, and I feel no sense of accomplishment at all. I'd say it's like shooting fish in a barrel, but I have to imagine even that would be far more difficult than whatever this is. I kept my hands completely still and cleared multiple stages of Gotcha with zero struggle. Might as well be watching a Let's Play because I'm sure as heck not playing anything here. Could be the hardware, could be the game, I really don't know. Once in a while, something will glitch out, locking me into a blasting match with this guy in the tree. Nothing I did could take him out. Come on! Come on! Why won't you let me gotcha? That's it. The only two light gun letdowns. These titles may as well not have been on the Voyager at all. This controller is just that much more awkward to hold simply because they desperately needed to have these two non-games on here. The one positive feature of all these controllers is that they have 4 face buttons. While 2 of them are reversed A and B, the other 2 are turbo A and B buttons. Still reversed, but that's not the point. Remember how we cruised through a match or 2 of Hyper Olympic? It's because I was holding down a turbo button instead of the regular ones down here. Pretty nice to have a way to tap a button rapidly by just holding down a single input. I mean, take a game like Field Combat, which is really Field Combat? Wow, these Power Joy folks struggle with accurate spelling more than I do. It takes a bit of dexterity to repeatedly push the face buttons and zap away baddies, especially considering just how slow your shot is here. But now, we have no need to worry because we've got turbo buttons that... Oh, for the love of... The rapid fire doesn't work all the time? I have to stop being surprised by this stuff. Same thing happens when we try out Galg for the Famicom. We're hitting the rapid fire button and getting nothing. Sure, I don't think many folks are going to be complaining about their Galg experience being hindered. I don't think it's a great game even on original hardware. But if you create a system that includes software, I feel like said software should work across the board with the hardware you designed. Even if it's bootlegged, even if it's Galg. We shouldn't have to deal with an improperly playing light gun. We shouldn't have to guess if included turbo functions will function with this game or that game. Everything should just work. You chose the games, Power Joy. We know you weren't paying licensing fees. Is it so hard to check that your hacked and pirated software plays nice with your own shady knockoff console? We've seen devices like the Voyager before, one of a million bootleg systems packed with a library of ill-gotten games. And over years of covering these wild hunks of plastic and sadness, I've noticed a certain sentiment regarding access to older video games. A growing belief that video game piracy is justified. And why? Because as time moves on, some games become harder to access officially. Titles aren't brought to modern platforms, or are difficult to find, or are just out of print and crazy expensive on the secondhand market. Personally, I want everyone to have the ability to play every game that ever was and ever will be. But units like the Voyager lie to you. No matter the software they wave in front of your face, on original hardware, these games perform, feel, and look a certain way. These miscellaneous titles here are not the real games. They're Frankenstein's monster, game code augmented, chopped, stitched back together, and shocked to life. They are a different beast. Simple games like Space Invaders have seriously bad visual glitches that can lock a frozen image of a bunch of enemies that are not actually on the playfield. Why would you subject yourself to something like this? What you're getting in systems like the Voyager is called paid piracy. Money that fuels stolen work that companies like Power Joy have no right to use. The creators of the original work deserve all your coins, not these people. If a game is absolutely inaccessible for some wild, insurmountable reason, piracy should never involve money changing hands. Pirates don't pay for their goods. And even if you don't agree with me, every game I've seen so far, and likely every game to come, are all early entries in the Famicom library. Does that mean they're all bad games? No. But what it does mean is that a ton of arguably good games are not here. So you won't be seeing Mega Man, Super Mario 2 or 3, Zelda, Metroid, Contra. You know what? I could keep listing games off here, but I think you get the picture. This isn't just a scam, it's a scam that doesn't even give you the games that people would desperately want to play. But there isn't just pirated official software on this device. No, because believe it or not, there is also pirated, unlicensed work on here as well. Like this game, Othello. If you're unfamiliar, Othello is a two-player board game played with reversible black and white discs, which predates the NES. And Othello is actually a tweaked version of an even older game called Rerez. This unlicensed Othello game would most likely be unremarkable when played with a friend. You just have to get over the hurdle of the game's nonsensical controls. But I didn't play it with a friend, acquaintance, or even an enemy. No, I played it with the computer. Folks, I'm not new to computer opponents needing to calculate moves. Some titles, like this very game, require some time in order for a computer opponent to make a move. It usually takes a few seconds, but Othello on the Voyager? Oh boy, this thing chugs. Even the opening move takes a ridiculously long time. I mean, look at this. I'm no Othello Grand Champion, but I don't think it should take very long to figure out where to put your starting piece. You don't have many options here, game. Pick anything. Come on, seriously. How long does this take? Place your stupid circle. Oh, finally. Okay, now I make my next move and... Oh, good, sweet Shakespeare. It's now taking even longer? Is it making calculations with an abacus that fell into a vat of molasses? For the sake of comparison, I fired up Nintendo's officially licensed Othello. I played a full match of Nintendo's legit version on high skill difficulty, and it took around 9 minutes for a match. On Bootleg Othello, double that time! The computer competitor eventually took so long calculating its strategy that while I was waiting, I could actually play 2 rounds of moves in Nintendo's Othello. No lie, just one turn alone could go over a full minute of waiting. It's got loads of other problems too. The start screen has balloon animations that seem to glitch out and get stuck. Not all of them, you do see one go by, just the other ones seem to kind of get stuck there. You can accidentally forfeit matches by grazing the select button, and the game's control scheme is totally, absolutely nonsensical, making it take much longer to get through a match. It's a mess. Seriously, which version of Othello would you rather play? Nintendo's, featuring a clean, aesthetically pleasing menu, or Voyager's, which is so dirty it features an actual chain smoker? I liked this guy better when he was in the X-Files. There are other unlicensed games included with the Voyager, many of which I've had run-ins with on other scam hardware. You might recognize a few. With the Voyager's swapped face buttons and its third-rate gamepad build, we're not having a great time. Still, every once in a while, the software itself can run into issues, glitches, or errors that I may or may not have come up against in the past. Take, for example, Aladdin 3, an unlicensed horizontal shooter. Everything seemed to be working okay, that is, until a power-up got caught at the edge of the screen, preventing me from being able to snag it. Are you kidding me with this? It's so freaking aggravating. Mix unlicensed software with terrible hardware, and you never know what you'll get. In the best cases, when unlicensed titles like these are working, these games are little more than boring retreads of existing genres or properties, games way out of style by the 90s. Take something like this, Wisdom Boy. It's a game where you're supposed to fit chunky puzzle pieces together by changing their orientation. You just need to take in a few seconds of footage to understand just how bland this experience is. Keep spinning those pieces, get the right configuration, witness the infuriating flickering that hurts your eyes, then move on to do it all over again. When you run out of time or patience, you're treated to a game over screen. Holy crap, who knew the stakes were so high? At least Wisdom Boy's ghost seems to be happy about getting crushed.
You saved me from my shape-spinning hellscape!
I saved us both, Wisdom Boy. I saved us both. Here's another unlicensed release, Rush Roller, an unofficial port of a Japanese arcade game called Crush Roller. This title plays a little like Splatoon. Your goal is to paint the roads with your color while avoiding enemies. This could have been a decently fun time. The only problem though? The enemies hunt you down with relentless precision every single time. It's unbearable. I almost had fun. Almost. Fire Dragon. I've seen a lot of Snake clones in knockoff consoles and carts, but I've mostly kind of wrote them off and moved on. I know Snake. Most people do. I grew up playing it in tons of different formats. Heck, I dove into its sequel a little while ago when we were covering the N-Gage. So I should have no problem getting into this, right? Wrong. I'm not showing peak Snake skill here. I suck. But what's going on? I'm usually not this bad at Nokia's killer app. So I started to really look into this game, and I noticed something. I think the head of the dragon is throwing me off. It's way too long. Look at it. The rest of the body takes up single circular spaces, right? But the head though, it's 2 circles. This little visual design choice gives you a false impression of Mr. Dragon's turning radius. So when you turn over here where the eyes are instead of turning where the nose is. Yeah, you're seeing it now, aren't you? It's Snake savagery. A mighty dumb design choice, isn't it? I'm impressed that the folks that made this unlicensed jaunt succeeded in messing up one of the simplest, most ported, most widely known games ever. Between the crappy version of Snake on the system's LCD handheld mode and the broken buffoonery that is Fire Dragon, this system has attempted to deliver Snake to players twice and failed embarrassingly both times.
Snake? Snake?
This game sucks. Bravo! One can only hope you didn't try to take another classic game and attempt to find some way to... Magic Jewellery. It's columns. Columns with harsh graphics. Columns with irritating and oddly stolen music. If you play this long enough, the soundtrack switches to the love theme from The Godfather. Oh, I need to... 1 second. Okay, hold on. 1 second.
I don't want anyone to hear the song this way. Listen to how the massacre, my boy.
World Cup 2002. 1 platter game or 2 platter game. That's kind of funny. Hang on. 2002? It even says copyright 2002. When did this thing come out? I thought it was from the 90s, closer to when the original Game Boy was Nintendo's hot portable device. Why would you make your rip-off game console look like a 13-year-old system? This archive of the old Power Joy website lists the Voyager for sale in 2004. 2004? Are you kidding me? It might seem redundant to say this because the game's loaded on this thing, but the Power Joy Voyager was way behind the times. The Game Boy Advance had been in gamers' hands for 3 years, and they'd even released the Advance SP just 1 year previous. Typically, consoles like this are designed to trick consumers into thinking they're buying the latest and greatest game console that they've been seeing everywhere, but for significantly less. Then they get bait and switched with a Famiclone. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that no gamer worth their thumbs would have confused this with this thing. I mean, original Game Boys were still around, but far from the must-have new tech at the time. So the fact they went with this design blows my mind. I feel like the exclusive market for this thing must have been older adults buying it for the young game fan in their lives. No one else could have fallen for this. Anyone would have been better off buying one of these, because the Game Boy Advance is backwards compatible with original Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. Whether you plug up the Voyager to a TV or play it on the go, it was no contest compared to the Game Boy's extensive library and shockingly good graphics. You could play Doom on a GBA, a fully 3D game, instead of feeling like you've been doomed when playing the Voyager. Also, just to rub it in, having a portable console at this time without Pokemon? Whew. Brave, stupid choice. But back to this game, World Cup 2002. Yeah, okay there, buddy. I recognize this game right from the title screen, and 2002 isn't the date this came out. This is Soccer, a Nintendo-published game from the mid-80s. I guess that didn't matter to the folks that augmented and pirated an official Nintendo property, because everyone in this game has now been turned into bunnies. Yes, folks, hippity-hop happy soccer time. Bunnies on the pitch, y'all! If you like soccer on the NES and bunnies on the Earth, this is the game for you. It plays very similar to the official Nintendo release, which I don't know that I was ever great at. Sure is soccery though. Look! I can kick a ball good. Play long enough and you get to take in the halftime show. Featuring not bunnies? I don't know, are those bears or kitties or something? This, my friends, will likely remain a mystery. The only other major change I noticed was that the team selection had been modified from the original. China is now a selectable country where they were not in the original. Who did they replace, you might ask? Japan! Removing Japan from the team select and turning everyone into carrot munchers? Yeah, that'll fool those vengeful Nintendo lawyers. I wonder if we can find another game that has some kind of animal influence here. Ooh, how about this? Pandamar. Never heard of it, but the word panda is right there in the title. Let's take it for a spin. Nope! We're done. Cut the mic. Episode over. This is... Wow, just... Ooh! The guts of Power Joy. They were stomping thin legal ice with all the stuff we've already seen. The look of the hardware, clay shooting from Duck Hunt, bunnyifying the soccers. Maybe those could keep Nintendo from kicking in your door with a team of lawyers, but the spectacular Italian kinspeople? The saviors of the fungal territory? The famous Brothers Mario? You tossed in a ROM hack of that? The audacity. Complete disregard for the safety and well-being of the Power Joy Empire. Did they seriously think that Nintendo wouldn't catch wind of the use of one of their most important games ever? Was the Panda reskin really gonna do the trick? Oh, relax guys, it's pandas. It's nothing like the other game.
Panda. Mario. Panda. Mario.
Pandamar.
You get what they did?
As you all can plainly see, we're dealing with a very tweaked game ROM here. Lots of augmented sprites. We're seeing things I don't even know how to describe. Tampering like this is bound to lead to problems, and unfortunately, some crop up pretty quick. Things were going fine at first. Sure, the classic Mario soundtrack had been switched with the melodies of a feral animal stumbling across a keyboard. That is, until we successfully got ourselves to the end of the first stage, awkwardly jumping for the flagpole, and... Whatever tinkering they did under the hood needs to be de-tinked. Sometimes the music will kick back in properly in the moments little Pandamar travels to the other areas. Other times, we're not so lucky. The music hangs on a single droning note for the entire level. Just a sec.
Much better.
What? Have there been other modifications to this ROM? You tell me. We've got to make our way through all the classic Pandamar levels until we get to an end castle. You're familiar with these, right? All the classic elements, the stone, the lava, the fire, the boss battle. Hold it! What is that? Where's the Bowser? Where's the King Koopa? Bring the turtle monster back. Oh, there's other weirdness in the unhallowed realm of Pandamaria. Like when you decide to test out a 2-player run of the game, Player 2, Pandamar's slightly jaundiced brother, his name? Luigi. Better call Nintendo. Looks like we finally got proof that this was originally a Super Mario Brothers game. This whole thing is a mess. A vile, hilarious mess. We haven't even gotten to the way we're forced to control it. Remember, every B and A input on the system is backwards. That means in order to hold down the B input and get Pandamar running, you're forced to play through these nightmarish levels with your hand fixed into a kind of painful, hookish claw shape. Doc says I gots the Pandamarthritis.
Doc says I gots the Pandamarthritis.
This system claims to offer plenty of things: a competent handheld, an impressive home console, a capable multiplayer machine, action, sound, and thousands of games? Ha! Thousands of games. But we know the truth. The Voyager is a collection of low-cost wires, chips, and cheapo plastic. It's dull, redundant block games here and mangled pirated ROMs there. Its controllers can barely control, and buttons that are north, east, southwest, every direction but good. It's a system that goes out of its way to be mistaken as a Nintendo product while half-heartedly trying to cover up blunt thievery. Yes, the Power Joy Voyager is a terrible system. It truly, truly is. If you see one, don't pick it up, because even though it looks like a Game Boy, it's not. I wish I could say I'll never touch hardware like this again, but I need to let you in on a little secret. Power Joy is just one piece of the puzzle. There are others out there offering power and sometimes joy, but delivering neither. And they will be exposed. Oh yes! Stay tuned, folks. This ain't over.
Oh yeah! Jump in, Panda Town. Here he comes, weird walking squat down. Blue dude, spitting fire out his tube. Panda's yellow twin, Luigi's new skin. We all know the system's piracy will get you janky ROMs. You'll get hurt!